A bit about heart disease. You know, it's a terrible, terrible thing as we already know. And chances are we know somebody who has been impacted by heart disease. According to the American Heart Association, 1 in 3 women die from heart disease. That's about 1 woman every 80 seconds. That's a terrible statistic, and it would be great if we could get rid of that altogether. Our goal here today is to arm you with all the knowledge that we possibly can so that you can take charge of your heart health. And you may pick up information here today, and we hope you do, that you can go out and share with your family and your friends and whoever else you may be visiting with at any time. Please note that in front of you, we have provided you with a pen and notepad. We encourage you to write down some notes that you may hear today or any questions that you may have. And if you want to pass those over to our staff members, there's Debbie on the back center there. We'll have Michelle and several others that they will be happy to come down and pick up your question, and then we'll get those in line. After today's discussion, we hope that you will have an opportunity to, if you want to ask us any questions, that would be fine, and we look forward to that as well. Now, in front of you, do you see the black device that's right in front of you on the desk or on the table, right? Everybody should have one. Now, we want to be able to hear what you have to say. We want to make sure that we can hear your comment or your question. So here's how they work. On the front center of that black device, that's a microphone. So in the front center, there's a button. We need you to press and hold that button down as you ask your question or you make your comment. So the button's in the front center, press and hold while you ask your question. That way, everybody will know. Okay, so what I'd like to do right now is something very special. We are joined by someone who is special, means a lot to us. Former patient, former guest. Her name is Carla Jefferson, and she has taken time out as a former patient to spend her time with us today at this event. And right now, I would like to recognize Carla and thank her. So if we could, I don't know where Carla is sitting. Carla, would you please stand and be recognized? You're amazing. And now I would like to do something else that's very, very special. We have a keynote speaker today, as you probably know. He had quite the medical journey, right? And so there was a core medical team that took care of Kevin. And I'll tell you, they represent so many colleagues that are not in this room today. I want you to understand that. And those are colleagues that are both clinical and non-clinical. Everybody contributed from different departments, different disciplines in one way or another. So I would like the core medical team to please join me on stage so that they can be recognized for the outstanding care that they provided. Safe, quality, compassionate care, as we like to think of it here at the hospital. And I'm just going to call the names. I don't have them in exact order because I didn't know what order you would walk up in. So, Mijiro Okobia. Who's standing out? If you would step forward. Edith Guevara. Terry Guajardo. I see Brandon Driver. Pamela Tassin, is she with us? I don't think Pamela made it just yet, but Pamela's with the lab here at the hospital. Julie Dunnigan, to my left, cardiac rehabilitation. Nancy Rissler, dietitian. I think she's in there. And I want to go back, and I want to make a note that Edith and Terry Guajardo, they're both nurse practitioners. I want to make sure that I get that in there because I accidentally missed it. And Mijiro is with the pharmacy. So this is the core medical team that really cared for our keynote speaker today. So congratulations and thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And by the way, they're not here today, but I also would be remiss if I did not mention our keynote's cardiologist, Samuel Wilbert, MD, and heart surgeon, David Moore, MD. Two amazing physicians, and of course they were leading the way. They were guiding the way in our keynote's care. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our keynote. He is a gentleman that has a compelling story. I've known him for several years now, has quite the story to tell. And you're going to learn in just a minute why and how it's so compelling. I can tell you that he, since he was here, he lives his life in a completely different way. His outlook is different than it was before. He sees life through a different lens now, as you might imagine. And that's very exciting for those of us who know him, those of us who meet him, and certainly for Kevin, his family, and his supporters. He is a gentleman. He is a bona fide gentleman. And we are so fortunate that he is with us today. Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Kevin Kirksey. Go.
Is my mic on? Yeah, I guess so. My wife says I talk loud enough at home, so maybe I don't need this. So wow, that was quite a welcome. Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate that. And thanks all of you for allowing my heart the opportunity to speak today. You know, with God's help, I hope to inspire each and every one of you in some way before my talk is over. You know, we don't always get a chance to see the more raw or intimate moments of somebody's journey. And with that in mind, I'd like to draw your attention to somebody that's been with me the entire way. You see, I fell in love with her 40 years ago, the day we met. We've been married for 38 years. June, would you raise your hand? This is my wife, June Kirksey. and also by a show of hands, how many of you in here have either known somebody or currently know somebody that's been affected or impacted by heart disease? Just raise your hand. Look around. It's no wonder the American Heart Association goes on record to say this is the #1 killer in the world, the #1 killer in the United States, the #1 killer in North Texas, ahead of all cancers combined. Every 40 seconds in this great country, somebody suffers a heart attack. I did the math the other day. That's 2,160 heart attacks in one day. And by the grace of God and the efforts of countless people, and you met several of them just a moment ago, I am here. But I'm here with a heart filled with desire to make a difference, to make an impact. June and I have often been asked to tell our story. And I kind of struggle with that because we really don't have a story. You see, June and I are just characters in one chapter of a great story that's being told by the Heart Hospital. I can share with you a little bit about that chapter, though. You see, my life was perfect, and my perfect life at the time was really the calm before the storm, a very big storm that was heading my way. I had no symptoms. I had no signs of any health issues, no nothing. I felt perfect. I was leaving a routine annual doctor's appointment just over here at Pavilion 1. And on my way out, I stopped and I turned, and out of my mouth came a question that I had not been thinking about. And that question later proved to save my life, and that question later proved to me that there is divine intervention. Hey, doc, I feel great. I feel fantastic. I hope you don't think this is strange or weird, but is there something maybe we should check on the inside of my body? He thought about it and said, yes, I'd like to have you go do a coronary calcium scan. I said, sure. Well, how bad can that be? It's 10 minutes. They take pictures and out you go. On the way to the elevator that day, I just happened to go past the x-ray lab, and I stopped in there and I said, hey, is this where you do these scans? And they said, yes, we do. And what's your name? And we see that your doctor has ordered one. We can take you right now. And I said, no, I'm too busy. This was a Friday. Would you like to come back Monday morning? Sure. You know, and honestly, I said sure just to get out of the situation. I had never really acted on my health in my life, but over the weekend, something told me perhaps I should go take this test. I go take the test. The only thing different between my experience with the test and what they told me was, it was 10 minutes. It felt like it was 30, 40 minutes for me. I jump on a plane. I go out to Northern California on business. I'm on my first business meeting. My cell phone rings. It's the doctor's office. I immediately sent it to voicemail because I think they're calling to tell me the good results. They called 1 minute later, and I sent it to voicemail again, thinking it was a mistake. They called me 2 more times in the next 10 minutes, and I said, somebody's trying to get a hold of me. Called back to my doctor's office, got Nurse Kathy on the phone. I said, Kathy, somebody's trying to reach me. She said, Kevin, it was me. The results of your tests were not good. I said, well, what does that mean? She goes, it's the worst the doc's ever seen. I said, well, okay, what does that mean? She says, it means you are at an extreme risk of a cardiac event or a stroke at any moment. I'm thinking to myself, my next step could be my last. Kathy, what do I do? Well, we made arrangements for you to see a cardiologist up here at Legacy Heart just down the road, and we need to get you in there this afternoon so they can take a look at you and begin testing. I'm in California. What do I do? She said, can you remain calm and come home immediately? I went back to the airport. I got on a plane. I had to call June to say, I just got here to California, but I'm coming home. There's a problem. So I got on the Wi-Fi of the airplane coming home, and June was on the internet. We were emailing back and forth. We were looking at this calcium scan. What is this test? What does it produce? We both found a chart that goes from 0 to 400. 0 is what you want. 400 is what you don't want. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't be 0 because they told me it was bad, and I certainly can't be 400 because I saw a description on Dr. Google that said, probability exists for extensive cardiac damage. I said, that can't be me. I don't have damage. I feel great. The next morning, on the way up to see the cardiologist, I called Nurse Kathy to find out what my score was. I was right. It wasn't 0. It wasn't 400. It was 6,518. It was so far off the charts, I'm surprised I didn't wreck my car. I said, Kathy, something is wrong. This does not make any sense. I can't conceive of this. Kevin, the technician, couldn't believe it either, and she ran the test 3 times. That explained to me why my test took 30 minutes. She got the same result, and they verified and confirmed that machine had been calibrated just the day before. So after further testing, I was given one option for survival, and it ended up to be an open heart cardiac bypass surgery, which I had here. I spoke earlier about the intimate moments. We chose to stay the night before surgery at one of the hospitals just across the parking lot here. We did that because there was an ice storm coming to Dallas, and we didn't want any part of trying to fight the ice on the way up to the hospital. And I really wanted to be at my home, but here I am in this hotel room, the TV's on, the heater is humming. You've heard this before, and June comes to the bed, and she puts the TV on pause, and she said, Kevin, I'd like to ask you a favor. Oh, sure, my wife, what favor would you like? She goes, oftentimes when people come out of these type of surgeries, they come out referring to and talking about a light that they're quite attracted to. And if you see the light, don't be afraid of it, but I need to ask you a very, very, very selfish question. If you see this light and you're attracted to it, and even if you see your mom and dad and you want to go to them, please fight it. Please don't go. I'm not ready for you to leave. Moments before being wheeled into surgery the next morning, June's on one side. I look up at her face. Her face is quite calm, but I see terror in her eyes. I look at my son. His name is Kevin. His face looks quite calm. I see he's discombobulated because I can imagine he's this young man sitting there saying, here's my father, the indestructible one, lay in front of me broken, and I can't do anything about it. I was at my life's heightened sense of vulnerability and fear. And as they're wheeling me into the operating room, all I could think to do is close my eyes. And I can share with you the prayer I said. Dear God, I have come to terms with my mortality. My precious wife is not ready for my passing. Please take me today if it is your will to do so. And if I am to survive, I'd like your help in achieving a bucket list of the 3 most essential items in my life. Number 1, I'd like to dance with my wife again. Number 2, I'd like to hold hands with my wife and take a walk. And number 3, I'd like to meet and get to know my unborn grandchild. Thank you for the life you've been giving to me so far. I give myself entirely and completely up to you. About that time, I wheeled into the operating room. I was in OR number 1 here at the hospital. It's 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. It was early. And I saw people and lights, and I didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, I felt prayer coming over me. It was almost as if I was laying underneath a waterfall of prayer. And it occurs to me that a number of people that I work with told me they were going to start praying for me about the time my surgery began. Well, here's the great news. I did feel and I did hear their prayer. And the even greater news is God answered mine. You see, because I've achieved my life's bucket list already. I have nothing else. I don't want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro or anything else. I've danced with her, we've taken a walk, and I have the most beautiful grandson you can ever imagine. So, I got to tell you, I just love this theme, Works of Heart. When I first heard about it, I was so inspired, and to see the artwork out in the lobby is just amazing, these great artists with these great patient stories. But as I'm looking at them, it occurs to me that maybe perhaps there's a work of heart that's missing. You see, these works of heart are about these great artists and these phenomenal patients that survived and have a great story. But I didn't see one about the unsung heroes that made these possible. And with your blessing, I would like the privilege and the opportunity of painting that for you right now. I'm going to give this work of heart that I paint a name, and I'm going to call it The Little Things. You see, the canvas I'm going to use for this piece of artwork is the countless, selfless, tireless, passionate, talented people that work in this facility. And I don't mean just the great surgeons. I'm talking about the valet people, the food service, the facilities people, the nurses, the administration, the technicians, everyone. And the brushes that I use to draw these unsung heroes on the canvas are going to be my words. And the colors that I use for this painting are going to be my heartfelt sincerity that I put into it. So, the little things. I believe that all little things, all big things are made possible by little things with lasting impressions. Randy said I'm living a new life. I am. I gave it a name. I call it Life 2.0. And that came about as a number of little things that have made lasting impressions. My most prominent memory of being in this heart hospital was all the little things that these people, many of you that you've seen were up here just earlier, did for me and my family. You see, it's the little things that all of these people do for their patients that affirm their patients' value, relevance, and importance. It's the little things that do that. And I came to observe by being in this hospital and came to learn that when you affirm another person's value, relevance, and importance, that's a form of love. And that's a form of love that we all can give. And it's a form of love that I received every minute while I was in this hospital. It's also a form of love that brings life to people. Try it out. Go tell somebody today how important they are in your life and how important they are to this world. Hold the door open for a stranger. Do something to affirm the value, relevance, importance of another human being. And you know what? You will see life. You will see them come to life at that moment. I find it very profound. See, I counted and documented over 120 little things that occurred with me while I was in this hospital. I wrote them all down. I'll share a few of them with you. Upon the cardiologist telling me I had one option for survival, I said, I need your help with two things that I can't accomplish myself. Something's telling me I need to move as fast as I possibly can. Will you help me with that? And I don't know anything about cardiac surgeons. Would you find one for me? And in baseball terms, I said, would you find me a starter? I don't want a bench warmer. Find me a really good one. He says, just a moment. He steps out. He comes back in the room 3 or 4 minutes later. He says, I've got great news. We're going to move very fast, and I found a starter that's going to accept your case. When June and I, and the act of just listening and acting, that little thing made all the difference in my life, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. When June and I sat down and met with this starter, he was like any other surgeon. He told me what was wrong with me, and he told me how he was going to fix it. But he said something to me that I will go to my grave with. He says to me on the way out, I'm honored, grateful, and privileged for the trust and faith you are giving me by putting your life in my hands. This is an icon of a surgeon at this hospital, getting down to that personal level with the patient and telling me that. You know, this gentleman invited me to observe an open heart surgery not too long ago. I was in the operating room. I got to see it. And afterwards, it changed my life. And I wrote the surgeon an email, and I said, Dr. Moore, told him what my experiences are. But in that email, I said, I no longer think of you as a surgeon. I now think of you as an artist. So how fitting is that relative to this theme, Works of Heart, and the artistry that goes behind it? I had an IV nurse that sensed I was a little nervous, and she put her hands on my hand and she said, Kevin, nothing's going to happen to you until you're ready. So why don't we just sit here and visit and be calm, and you just let me know when you're ready. That was very kind. I had to have my blood sugars tested every hour on the hour when I was recovering in the hospital. And I remember the nurse, and she was actually one of the ones that was up here as a nurse practitioner, Edith. She would come in, and I used to think to myself, I hope she's bringing morphine. I hope she's bringing me something to do with the pain. And one day she asked me, what do you think your blood sugar test is going to be? And I told her, and she says, I think it's going to be this. And I think she won that first one. But there started a game. Every time she came in my room to test my blood sugars, you know what? I transformed from where's the morphine to I can't wait to play the game. And it dawns on me a month later, and I really wanted to get up and give all of these people a hug, but it dawned on me much later what this young lady was doing was she was valuing my importance as a human being and giving me a little break, just a peace of mind from the pain. That's what she was really doing. She probably had no interest in seeing who won. I did, but it got me off to a good start. The first time I was able to walk around the nurses' station, I was met with two things. I was met with a high five and these words, you are a rock star. Those small things will stay with me the rest of my life. As I was coming into cardiac rehabilitation, I would pass an office that was behind closed glass. I think the lady had something to do with the emergency room. And I don't know if there's a number of people here that have gone through cardiac rehabilitation. And sometimes it's a little bit depressing, sometimes it's a little bit daunting. But this lady would give me a smile. And then the next few times it turned to a smile and a wave. And every day I got up to come to rehab, I wasn't thinking about woe is me. I was thinking about I can't wait to see that smile and that wave. That's what I look forward to. And finally, the last one I'll share with you is I was leaving an event here at the hospital, very much like what you're at today. And there was a gentleman on his hands and knees washing the glass windows of the door that I was going to be exiting. And as I approached, I said to him, boy, you're doing a fantastic job. I promise you I won't mess them up. This man stands, and he turns, he looks at me with a big smile, and he says, it's quite all right if you do so, sir. So I was that important to him that it was okay if I messed up his good work on those windows. You see, those types of little things run rampant in this hospital. That's my, so it's time to put some color on this. You see, these unsung heroes, they place their lives on hold for me. They taught me about my medications, about dieting, about exercise. They taught me how to smile for no reason. They taught me how to be kind to a stranger, and I learned how wonderful it felt to be kind. You know, they encouraged me, they challenged me, they even high-fived me. But most importantly, they ministered to June at a time I was unable to. And it didn't ask for anything in return. My Life 2.0 that I'm living is based upon their example. I'd like to put some color on my painting as I wrap it up, and that color is, what do these unsung heroes do? Why do they matter and the difference they make? What they do is they make bucket lists possible to achieve. They save, restore, extend, and enhance life. All of them. It takes an army. Why do they matter? Without them, there is no diagnosis, there is no procedure, there is no surgery, and people don't live. And you see, they do this for people that are not even in their direct care. You see, I'm aware of countless cases where people in the state of Texas and even the outside of the state of Texas heard something about our journey, heard something about the chapter of the story that we went through and the success of this hospital in that. And it was compelling enough for them to go get checked out, compelling enough to make a difference. And a number of these people got checked out and were in a very similar situation that I was and had life-saving surgery. I find it very profound that the great work that the people do here can stand well beyond the confines of their department, well beyond the confines of their facility, and actually save lives for people that they never meet. I find that quite profound. So that's my, the difference that the difference that they make. The most amazing, precious, and inspirational observation I have is about these unsung heroes. You see, they're just like me, they're just like you. They have life, but when they come in here, they put life behind them. And you know what they do? When I come into this place, you know what I feel? I feel they give, and they give, and they give, and they give until. And not one time did they ever ask for anything in return. They're selfless, and they dedicate their time and their energy and talent to bettering the lives of others. I like to say they do what makes the angels smile. I've also gone on record to say this is why I refer to this place as a hospital of angels. I'm going to sign this work of art in just a moment. Before I do, I would like to share with you, I think each one of you has an opportunity to create your own work of art, just like they've done in the hospital, just like I've shared with you today, and I would encourage you to do it around awareness, about heart disease awareness. To get started, I would invite you to share the chapter that June and I went through. Tell somebody, tell a neighbor, tell a family member, tell a work colleague, just tell somebody. Get acquainted with the American Heart Association. They would bend over backwards and be delighted to help you raise awareness. You see, if you do this, if you create your own work of heart in your own way, you will indeed contribute to somebody achieving their bucket list. You will contribute to saving, restoring, extending, and enhancing somebody's life. I know this to be true. I have personal experience it. You see, without all of us, every one of you in here, all of us doing this, I'm afraid that this great world war that's being waged on heart disease will come to an end. And unfortunately, we won't win. And personally speaking, people like June will lose their husband. People like my son will lose his father. And people like Kevin III will not get to meet his grandfather. The American Heart Association has been a great source of inspiration and awareness for me. They were the only source of information that could take me through everything that I went through, every test, every procedure, et cetera, and tell me what that was like in terms of I could understand it, tell me what the recovery times were, some of the mental and emotional aspects of it. They're also an organization that helped me understand my medications very well. They helped me understand my medications. They helped me understand how to diet, how to exercise, and they also help you with understanding high blood sugars, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. But the thing that I think they do most, and they don't really proclaim this, they're all about living a heart-healthy life. I think they take it a step further. They're all about living a good life. A heart-healthy life is part of that. You see, they talk about relieving stress. So I would get acquainted with them. I truly hope I've said something today that's inspired you, or you know somebody that can be inspired by something I said today. I believe that a number of you will indeed contribute to saving a person's life as a result of painting your own picture, your own work of heart. And before I close, I'd like to report that sadly, since I began speaking, 37 people in this country have had a heart attack. And in 40 more seconds from now, another person is going to suffer a heart attack, and it's not going to stop. So I'd like to sign my work of heart. Unlike an artist, I don't think of myself as an artist. They sign their paintings. I'd like to sign mine, but I'm not going to sign it with my name. I'm going to sign it with the little thing that I give back to the Heart Hospital and to the American Heart Association. And on the bottom right-hand corner of my painting are inscribed these words: as patients, we move on, we move forward, but we never, ever forget. You are never, ever left behind, especially in our time of prayer. I am deeply grateful and honored for the precious time that you've shared with me today. And coming from a very, very deep place in my heart, may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Kevin. What a journey. What a perspective. Thank you so much for taking time out for us today. Just amazing. And you're right. You're right. This is horrible. It's terrible. You're right about the statistics. And to think about the people who have had heart attacks while you were presenting and sharing with us, it's awful. It's horrible. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to introduce our panelists at this time. We have 4 to share with you. And if they would come down to the stage, I'd like to bring them on. And what they're going to do, they're going to share a little bit about their background, maybe 90 seconds or so, a little bit about their background, so you have an appreciation of who is on this stage. It is an expert panel, I will tell you that. We have a cardiologist, we have an electrophysiologist, we have cardiac rehabilitation, and we have a dietitian. So if you all please come up on stage and take your seat, that would be fantastic. All right. And Kevin, if you'd like to join us on stage, that would be fantastic. You are certainly a valued panelist because there may well be questions for you. So, we know who Kevin Kirksey is, right? Okay, so we've got that, right? We've got the 90 seconds. Mustafa Doedwala, an electrophysiologist. If we can get a brief background on you, that would be fantastic.
Hi, everybody. I'm a native Houstonian, but I do like Dallas a little bit better. It pains me to say. So I went to undergrad at Rice University. I was a sociology major. And so kind of the disease state and how it affects us as human beings is really something that's always been touched me in that way. And then after that, I went to Johns Hopkins Medical School for my medical training. I was at Harvard Brigham and Women's for internal medicine, and then I did my cardiology and cardiac electrophysiology, which are heart rhythm disorders, at Tufts Medical Center. I've been in the DFW area now for 5 years, and am proud to say that I work here and get to work with all these people that you were commenting about, from the valet staff to those who service food and the surgeons, et cetera. So it's a great place to be, and I look forward to imparting any knowledge that you guys may get from me.
Now we have Stephen Model, cardiologist. Just share about your background, medical school, internship, residency.
Thank you for having me. So I'm from the North. Full disclosure, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. I did my medical training in Wisconsin, and then actually undergrad in Wisconsin, and then did my medicine at Northwestern University in Chicago. And then after about 25 years, realized you don't have to freeze half the year, and I moved to Arizona and did my cardiology training at University of Arizona. I've been in the Baylor system now for 8 years, and I specialize in preventive cardiology and cardiac imaging.
All right, and up next we have Nancy Rissler, dietitian.
Let's see, I did my undergraduate at University of Nebraska, and then I did my master's degree in clinical nutrition at Kansas University. I've been here for 13 years, and I've been a dietitian for over 20.
And finally on our stage, we have Julie Dunnigan from Cardiac Rehabilitation.
Hi, everyone. I think I might be the only native Texan up here, so I was born and raised here in town. I did my undergraduate and my master's degree at Texas Tech, and I have been with Baylor for 20 years this May, and then with the Heart Hospital since we opened, so for 13 years.
Fantastic, thank you. We have some questions that have come to us, so we're going to work through those questions with our expert panel. And I would say to the panel, whoever answers, direct the questions to the appropriate expert. They'll provide the primary answer. But if any of you have a follow-on thought, please go ahead and add to, if you would. The first question is for Dr. Model. Is pain on the upper portion of one's arms on the side nearest your body related to a person's heart or heart health?
On. So the advice I give to people to assess the heart is exercise. And if you think of a sprained ankle, hurts to walk, really hurts to run. And the best way to assess the heart is with exercise. And if you can run and feel great, the probability of having a heart attack is less than 5%. If you can't reach that full capacity, that's when I get most concerned. Pain at rest is difficult. Typically, people have a 90% blockage if it is cardiac. If they don't exercise, pain with exertion starts at about a 70% blockage. So really important is exercise to assess that. 94% of people that come to the ER do not have heart pain. So the most common is actually stomach reflux. 70% of all people have stomach reflux. Types of heart pain represent the next majority, and then musculoskeletal pain is the most common after that. So the theme is you have permission to exercise 5 days a week for 30 minutes.
Okay, here's a question, Dr. Doedwala. I know someone with a pacemaker, but I've heard about something called an ICD. What is that, and what is the difference between that and a pacemaker?
So when people often die from the heart, it can be a heart attack where there's a blockage in one of their heart vessels, and they get chest pain, they get taken to the cardiac cath lab, or they have to go to open heart. But often the way folks can die is sudden cardiac death. And that's when you have an electrical disturbance in the heart. So your heart's a pump, and it squeezes, and you get coronary arteries that provides blood flow to the heart for it to nourish itself and squeeze with oxygen. But there's a whole electrical circuitry in the heart. And the way I think about it is, the heart is a musical band, and you got all these instrument players. That's the muscle beating, but there has to be a conductor to the band, right? I mean, to the orchestra. So there's an electrical circuitry that tells the heart what to do. And in people whose heart function is weakened, or in the setting of getting a heart attack, the electrical circuitry can misbehave. And the lower chambers start going haywire. And rather than going at 50 or 80 beats per minute, it may go at 250 or 300 beats per minute. And suddenly, because the heart's just quivering, blood doesn't get up to the brain. You feel lightheaded, pass away, or pass out. And if it continues onward, that's when folks pass away from sudden cardiac death. So a defibrillator is oftentimes you can't tell the difference between a defibrillator and a pacemaker, but it's a device that goes up in the shoulder, and there's a couple of wires that go down into the heart. And those wires listen to every heartbeat you would have. And if you suddenly went at 250 beats per minute or 220 beats per minute, it would say, hey, this patient is in ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation. This is a cardiac arrest, and I need to shock. And then it would shock you back to rhythm and save your life. It's kind of like having, some people call it a paramedic in your chest. When we look on TV, if you watched ER or whatnot, and they put the paddles and they paddle you for, the person comes in unconscious and they paddle, this is happening inside the chest. A lot of these defibrillators have a pacemaker function to them, and so that's why they look similar. And a pacemaker takes care of slow hearts, and this is slow heart rates and can make you feel more energetic. But a defibrillator doesn't necessarily make you feel better. It is like flood insurance. It saves your life when you need it.
All right, thank you. Julie, often seniors have multiple health issues, so exercise can be difficult. Besides watching diet, having hobbies, and support of friends and family, what other suggestions do you have?
As far as exercise and being active, I would say, the most important thing is that you do what you can do. So and do what you enjoy as well. So try to be active every single day, whether that's going for a walk or if you want to ride a bicycle, do things like that, or even just taking those extra steps by parking a little bit further in the parking lot at the shopping center and get some extra steps that way. But sitting all day long is one of the things that, as we've gotten a little more advanced in society, we do a lot more. We're not as active in our daily work. Most of us in our jobs, we're sitting all day. So just trying to be more active any way you can. One of the things that I like to tell people too is have somebody to exercise with or be active with. So whether it's a spouse or a friend or a neighbor, it's always harder to say no to that evening walk when someone's waiting for you to go on that walk with. So make yourself, be committed by having somebody to go do those things with. So again, you have to find what is going to make you do it and continue to do it. So find something that's fun that you enjoy doing.
Thank you. All right, Nancy, this is, I guess, more or less a two-part question. So when it comes to heart health, of course, what are some foods to avoid? And what are some proper type foods? But also, how does sugar affect heart disease?
Okay, good question. So as far as heart health, the first part was as far as heart health foods to avoid. I'm a big fan of just, telling people to follow more of a Mediterranean style diet, which really that just means majority of your foods are coming from vegetables, fruits, whole grains. I'm more of a fan of trying to keep meat to more like a couple, especially red meat and pork, to a couple times a month. Chicken and fish a little more frequently. But on the whole, you're really kind of reducing the amount of protein, and mostly your foods are coming from vegetables and the whole grains and fruit. And the second part was sugar, yes. So sugar, to me, thank goodness the labeling has now kind of caught up, and it should be kind of transitioning where you can look at the food label and now see added sugar. So for the longest time, carbohydrates, there are sugars in carbohydrates, and some of those are natural sugars. Like, for example, if you have milk, it'll say there's sugar in there. Did they add sugar to the milk? No, it was milk sugar. But now the labeling laws changed, and so they now have to indicate if they add sugar, which is really important for things like, for example, for yogurt is a product that may have natural milk sugars in there, but as well as it may, if it's a sweetened yogurt, it has added sugar too. So I try to tell people avoid the added sugars. Those are the bad sugars. The ones that are processed sugars, whether that's sugar, corn syrup, solids, there's all kinds of names for sugar, but those, add a lot of calories into our diet. They add up really quickly. And then also they can cause, to me, if you're doing too much sugar, it can cause an inflammation in your body, which that inflammation in your body does kind of tend to make your artery walls a little stickier and cause that inflammation, which makes those plaques easier to lay down. So the more you can avoid added sugar, you can avoid that. So,
All right, thank you.
and
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
I agree 100%. I love the Mediterranean diet. Really, the main concept when you look at diet is inflammation. And we have a misconception in the society that if you have high cholesterol, you have heart disease. But that's not true. The highest risk population is, anybody have a guess? Nope. Nope. Who is the highest risk for heart attack? Rheumatoid arthritis. So chronic inflammatory disease has the highest risk, specifically rheumatoid arthritis is the highest risk population. 26% have a heart attack, 23% of diabetics, 21% of tobacco users, 22% of people with psoriatic arthritis have disease. So we don't look at that. We do a very poor job of understanding inflammation. And inflammation is two main sources. One is it's just genetic. You have a disease such as chronic inflammatory disease. Two, it's acquired over time. Osteoarthritis is a big source. I love yoga. The third is food inflammation. And the genius behind the Mediterranean diet is it really avoids the high inflammatory foods, red meat, pork, processed oils, and processed sugars. So those are the big four things you want to avoid. So really look into the anti-inflammatory foods, great supplements, vegetables, turmeric, ginger root, tart cherries, and really work on staying away from processed sugars, processed oils. Olive oil is really the only true oil. The problem is it's hard to cook with. And then JAMA just released an article 2 weeks ago that if you consume 2 servings of red meat, processed sausage, or chicken per week, you have a 20% higher risk of a heart attack. 1 can of soda per day, 20% risk of diabetes, increased risk of diabetes. So diet is really, really important.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Press and hold the center button.
Go ahead. Okay, speaking about the oil, olive oil being the only one, but it doesn't have a high heat tolerance. What is your opinion on avocado oil for things that you need to have a little hotter oil for?
So the challenge is where it's made and how it's made. So canola oil used to be great, but how they process it is important. Same thing with avocado oil. Oils themselves in a natural state are fine. Raw nuts are fine, soybeans are fine, peanuts are fine. It's how the manufacturers, they do a process called hydrogenation to make them last longer. And that's the chemical, it's free radical that causes cancer. And it's something our body doesn't process well. So if you do your research, you can find natural oils. It's just you're not going to find it in the traditional grocery store.
Dr. Muddle, on this, well, I'll ask all you guys here, but there's a lot of emphasis on no carbs, and then so I have a really close family member of mine who's 40 and is a CrossFit athlete and has atherosclerosis and found to have 80% LED disease. And so now the question is, what do we do dietarily differently? And we think we're eating healthy. So I watched this Netflix thing, Game Changers, which is be vegan. Food is, all the meats are no good. So, but then they talk about that carbs are okay and eating full-grained breads and things like that. And I've been more of no carbs and try to eat, chicken and fish. So what are y'all's thoughts on those on that area?
So I really just yeah, like he said, yeah, a lot of meat, it's not good. Carbs have been so, like, made to make so bad. And I think there's good carbs and there's bad carbs. And I think a lot of where people get in trouble is, and it's easy for a physician or somebody who's in the industry talking to people about losing weight, is just avoid carbs. But not all carbs are equal. You need to avoid white processed carbs. Those are the ones that break down really quickly and do cause a rise in your blood sugars. There's good carbs. There's things like, brown rice and quinoa and whole wheat pasta and, Ezekiel bread and 100% whole grain breads, 100% whole grain cereals. Those are the good carbs that we need to get in. In general, there's so many crazy little diets out there right now, whether it's keto or intermittent fasting, South Beach, Atkins, whatever. I mean, all those diets, all they do is break down to just trying to get you to reduce your amount of calories you take in. As a population in the whole, we're just overeating too much. And so when you see a diet, really, you can just break, like the intermittent fasting thing is a great example. It's just it's not really, there's really no benefit. And for some people, diabetics, it's probably dangerous to go for 12, 16 hours without eating. But it's just cutting down your calories, basically. And then you have the bad part of intermittent fasting, which is, I think, people are so starving then that they make poor food choices. So I think, if people can just get back to, meal planning out what they're going to eat, know what their days are going to look like. I mean, I'm a big fan of usually on Saturday, Sunday, I'm prepping a lot of vegetables, and I will roast vegetables on Sunday to try to get me through my first half of my week. So I can enjoy those vegetables cold or whatever. So I think carbs are okay. Carbs are good. I mean, I think in that movie they might have talked about how elephants, it's an elephant, and they live on a plant-based diet and they're fine. I think people overestimate how much protein we need in our diet. People don't fully understand that by combining legumes and vegetables and grains, you complete your proteins, and you really don't need the protein that's in meat, because by combining foods, you complete the protein source.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Start over. Yes.
I just make one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, just a trivia question. How many mammals on the planet have flat teeth and move their jaw side to side and eat meat? So humans. So every single mammal on the planet, I'm a big fan of evolution and history. Every single mammal on the planet that's got flat teeth and moves their jaw side to side is a vegetarian. Every single mammal that has a hinged jaw and fangs eats meat. Life expectancy of the carnivores are much, much, much shorter than the vegetarians. So if you look at life expectancy by mammals, that's something to pay attention to. So don't watch TV, look at the history and evolution.
Okay. Dr. Dodwalla, is there a way to resolve tachycardia without medication? And what is tachycardia?
So tachycardia is a description. It's a grab bag of many, many diseases. Just means fast heart rate. Cardia, heart, tachy, fast. Bradycardia, heart is the cardia part, and brady is slow. And tachycardia could be, hey, you know what? My set point for my normal heart rate is just fast. And so some people have what we call inappropriate sinus tachycardia, where their normal heart rate is just faster than a regular, than other folks. For some people, there's an electrical circuitry that's abnormal. And so ventricular tachycardia is one type of abnormal circuit in the lower chambers. And you can have upper chamber arrhythmias. The upper chambers are called the atria. And so there's atrial tachycardia, which could be organized fast heart rates, atrial fibrillation. These are all kind of things. So depending on the diagnosis, we first have to make the diagnosis before we decide about discussing treatment. So there may be no treatment. It may be what Dr. Model was talking about, yoga and trying to get your heart rate down with meditation. It may be mindfulness. It may be we need to be on a beta blocker or a calcium channel blocker, which are medicines to slow down the heart rate. It could be other medications, and sometimes it's procedural. Ablations. These are treatments that we perform where we go through the veins in the or the arteries in the groin and go up into the heart and find the electrical circuit that is short-circuited and misbehaving, and track it, and then burn it with pinpoint burns. And so that's another way that we can treat that.
Thank you. Fantastic. Dr. Model, can you help us understand about the newest research education on women and heart health and heart attacks?
Well, I think the leading cause of death of men is a heart attack. The leading cause of death in women is also a heart attack. So it's equally as common. I think the hard part is what we define in terms of chest pain and when to come to the hospital. And women tend to have what we call non-cardiac symptoms. And part of that is just how the body's designed and engineered. And the nerve that runs to the heart, the vagus nerve, also runs to your gastrointestinal system. And women are more likely to have gastrointestinal symptoms thinking it's a virus or something else, when really that's a heart attack. Again, it goes back to the beginning is exercise. And regardless of gender, I think if you exercise 5 days a week and understand your body, you'll know when something's different. And that's the time to trigger further intervention, going to the ER. For those of us that sit around, we don't know. And gastrointestinal symptoms get better with exercise because our muscles need the blood. We steal it from the stomach. At rest, our body steals blood from our muscles so we can digest. So we're more likely to have symptoms at rest. So I think it's important to recognize that it's equally as common. 60% of all people who have a calcium score is positive. And it's equally as common in women as in men. I've seen women with scores of 4,000 or 5,000. I've seen men with scores of 4,000 or 5,000. So I think it's unfair to say that it's more common in men. Men typically have more chest pain when they have an event, so it's easier to detect. The hard part that we still don't understand, and we've been debating this for 20 years, is when to go to the ER. And again, it comes back to exercising, understand your body. If you have a blockage, you're more likely to have symptoms with exertion than waiting for rest.
Okay, very good. Julie. Cardiac, do you have your microphone? Awesome, that's great. So in terms of cardiac rehabilitation, how long, presuming someone has cardiac rehabilitation following a surgery or some type of procedure, how long does cardiac rehabilitation last? What kind of program do they typically get into, and what happens during rehab?
Okay, great question. So it's very individualized based on what your needs are and your goals are. But on average, patients are with us between 6 and 12 weeks, and they come in 3 days a week for exercise class. So we do different exercises with them. We try to do about 40 minutes of cardiovascular exercise, so being on a treadmill or a bicycle, a rowing machine, different things like that. And then we also try to incorporate some weightlifting with them to help get back to doing, things you need to be able to do. Got to get that strength back. And so, based on how the patient's progressing through the program, they might be able to finish in about 6 weeks. Sometimes people are ready to get back to work and they don't have, aren't able to come in much longer than that. So we try to accommodate their schedule. But the main thing that we want to teach patients when they come into cardiac rehab is to not only get in the routine of being active and getting that exercise in, but we also do a lot of education with them. So we're teaching them, what caused them to have their heart issues in the first place. And if it's something that's controllable, if it's diet, they get to meet with a dietitian. If it's stress related, we do stress management with them. So teaching them the skills that they need to continue to move forward in the future so they don't have another heart attack or another heart event. And also to really instill that lifelong love of exercise.
All right, great, thank you. Dr. Model, we're coming back to you. Is a CT angiogram with contrast safe for everyone? And part two, is it advised to have a CT angiogram after a certain age for people with high blood pressure?
So anatomic screening, looking for disease, I think is the future. I think the challenge in the U.S. is understanding the CT scanners that are available. And medical radiation is a huge problem. We do a very poor job of tracking it and understanding it. Newer generation CT scanners, like the ones we have at the Heart Hospital, the 256 and 512 slice scanners, have very minimal radiation. It's the equivalent of 10 chest x-rays. Some of the older generation CT scanners that are still in the marketplace are the equivalent of 10,000 to 50,000 chest x-rays. 4 coronary CTs on an old scanner is equivalent to the atomic bomb in terms of radiation dose. So I think it's very mindful when a physician orders a scan first, understand where you're going and understand the CT scan and the radiation dose. Medical radiation takes about 20 years to have an effect. So age is really important. Someone who's 40, I'd be much more cautious of getting a CT scan on a high radiation dose scanner compared to someone who's 70 or 75 years of age. Other countries do a better job of CT angiogram first. United Kingdom, really much of Europe, does CT first imaging. And they do screenings every 5 to 10 years on patients. In the US, we're not there yet. And I think part of it is our CT technology is not as good. And the insurance companies and the cash price is $1,700. I like to start with calcium scoring as an initial screen, which is a $100 study, lower radiation. And that's available to everybody over the age of 40. And I think that's a good starting point. Based on your calcium score, I think triaging which patients are then appropriate for CTA imaging right now would be the best way to go.
All right, we have a question from a gentleman on row 2.
Thank you, Randy. Kevin, I've never seen Kevin so quiet for such an extended period of time. So I'm somewhat tempted to engage him in this conversation. I'm really curious I'd like to hear it from Kevin as well, maybe how it was described, his 6,000 level calcium calcification of the heart. I'm not sure what the terminology was, but on a scale of 1 to 400, he's a 6,000. How was that described to you, Kevin, when you first learned of this, and then from you gentlemen, or the rest of the panel, what does that really mean? How does that affect the heart?
Well, you need to hear from the physicians about the technical aspect of it. My understanding is it's just a marker test. It's not conclusive, but if you have a high score, maybe it's an indication that you have to have further testing. That's my understanding. And when I was told that I had a composite score of 6,518, all I could do is I did some research on it, and I thought to myself, well, when I was growing up, I was hoping to set a record with throwing passes or hitting home runs. I didn't know that I'd be a contender for one of the higher calcium scan scores, but it basically was an indication that I was extremely blocked up, which I was. I mean, one of my major arteries was 100% blocked. There was no blood flow going through, and I was just living on some things called some collaterals, which I learned a lot about. So you guys want to comment on the particular?
Yeah, so calcium is a great test. And really, it's a screening tool to look at quantity of disease. It doesn't tell us percent blockage. Based on the quantity, we can predict someone's risk of heart attack. We also can help encourage more active participation in dietary changes, lifestyle changes, and prescription therapy. If your score is 0, your lifetime risk of a heart attack is 0.1%. A study came out 2 years ago that says you don't even need cholesterol medication. And we found that 50% of people on cholesterol medication, regardless of high cholesterol, will never have a heart attack because you need inflammation to combine. And we were able to take those patients off of cholesterol medicine. The next range we look at is the low risk range, which is 1 to 100. You have a 1 to 3% risk of a heart attack during the course of your life. Those patients benefit from more aggressive aspirin therapy, still debatable on cholesterol therapy. The score of 1 to 400, now you're looking at a 5% risk of a heart attack, and then cholesterol medication is warranted along with aspirin therapy. Scores above 400, you have a 5 to 20% risk of a heart attack. Scores above 1,000, it's above 20%. So it's used to really gauge need for pharmacologic therapy, aspirin, cholesterol medication, and is a good motivator to get people to exercise more often and change their diet.
What age? In other words, if somebody had a calcium score.
So we recommend starting at the age of 40, and again, it's just a radiation dose. 10% of the population will have a score above 400, and they have a gene that unfortunately makes them grow disease quicker. Some people get sunburnt in 5 minutes. Some people are outside all day and never get sunburnt. We can't control genetics. So 1 in 10 people will have a score that approaches 1,000, regardless of what they do. That disease starts around the age of 20s. So we recommend initial screening at the age of 40. Moderate risk disease starts around the age of 45 to 50. Low risk disease starts around the age of 60. So there's no guidelines on how often. I usually tell people to start at the age of 40 because really it's the high-risk population. We want to screen out early when you have a chance to stop at 100 versus 6,000 through changes. And then every 5 to 10 years, I recommend getting a surveillance scan.
Okay, very quickly, we're out of time, and one of our physicians needs to run to a case. Got one question from the middle right here, red sweater, if you'll ask us very quickly.
When you have AFib, how bad do you let it get before you have that procedure?
Did everybody hear that?
Yeah. The question was, when you have atrial fibrillation, how bad do you let it go before you do something about it? That is itself an hour-long conversation. But AFib is an upper chamber arrhythmia. It increases your risk of stroke. So that's one part of it, and that's one discussion. The other discussion is how it affects you from a symptom standpoint. Whether you're symptomatic or not from AFib, whether you feel short of breath, have palpitations, feel unwell with AFib or not, stroke prevention is irrespective of that. You have to have stroke prevention. So that's typically a blood thinner. Now, there are certain patients, if you're very young and don't have hypertension, don't have any risk factors, you can be on nothing. But in general, we'll tend to recommend a blood thinner like Eliquis or Coumadin or Xarelto. So that's one part. The symptom part is a different aspect. And there are a lot of patients who don't have any symptoms from atrial fibrillation, and they're just in AFib all the time. And those patients often can be just left alone with respect to trying to get them back into rhythm or not, and we can leave them in atrial fibrillation. For patients who feel fatigue or shortness of breath with AFib, there are medications we can use to try to get you into rhythm and or ablation. And that's a discussion you have with your electrophysiologist, with your cardiologist about what's important to you. Medicines can have side effects. Ablation has risk, and you have that conversation. And then there's other risk, other kind of things we look at to decide whether an ablation is more or less likely to be successful, and medications. And so that's just a conversation to have with your physician.
Okay, here we go. We're going to enter into the game show lightning round. So this is going to be very quick. Okay, each panelist, very quickly, is there one thing that you'd like our audience to take away from today and share with someone, share with as many people as they can? So very quickly, what do you think, Kevin?
Listen to yourself, act on your health, and if you have something to do with your heart, I know this is not politically correct, but get yourself to this place.
Dr. Dodwalla.
Just feel empowered with your own health, and make sure to talk to your physician about your concerns so you can tailor make a treatment plan that works for you.
If you look at life expectancy by country, the Mediterranean countries outlive us by 10 years.
I would say,
I steal your thunder.
yeah, you did. You don't have to be vegan to enjoy vegan meals. So I just encourage people to get protein, meat, red meat out of their diet, and eat more vegetables.
All right, last thing, if you are fortunate or unfortunate enough to have to come to our hospital, we will take great care of you, but having a heart event is scary, but coming to cardiac rehab afterwards is going to be life-changing for you, because we will make you feel like you are safe and you know what you need to do to be able to be active in your everyday life and get back to normal.
Fantastic. All right, just one quick comment for everybody, and then we'll let our panel go, and that is, following the event today, you will receive an electronic survey, and we hope that you will take a few minutes, complete that survey, and let us know what you think, including any topics for any future events. The other thing is, I want to remind everyone two things. If you're interested, please step right across the hall to our robot, our surgical robot, and give that a test drive, see if you want to have some fun there. And don't forget, your gift is right across the hallway there as well. Thank you so much to our expert panel for being here today. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.